Welcome everyone to Connecting Communities. I'm Renee, the producer and host of tonight's show. Robert Sains is our guest tonight. He is Dr. Bob's Pharmacy producer and host on Thursdays live at noon. He has quite an experience with a brown recluse spider to share with us. So welcome everyone to this episode of Arachnid Once Bitten. I know that we have spiders everywhere, and I'm not one of their biggest fan. In fact, keep me away from them. Thank you. We have just a few dropping by, but they're not real. And to be bitten by a spider is pretty scary. Should we worry about them here in the Pacific Northwest? Before you share your story, Robert, let's take a look at your adversary. A few pictures of two local spiders. We will have no live spiders on this show. The ones you see will be through the pictures and just a few dropping in, as you may see on set here. So let's begin with Exhibit A, the hobo spider. The hobo spider is a member of the funnel web family of spiders and is native to western parts of Europe. Contact with people in its native location is rare, since most homes and man-made structures in Europe are occupied by a different spider, the giant house spider, which aggressively defends its territory from the hobo especially. Sometime prior to 1930, the hobo spider, or most likely its eggs, were transported into the U.S. via the Seattle port. On an unknown vessel that was probably carrying agricultural goods from Europe, so we actually don't really know how it got here. But without any natural predators to keep its numbers contained, that spider readily adapted to its new urban environment, spreading its population to Idaho and Oregon over the next 40 years. In the late 60s, doctors saw different cases of spider bites that resembled the brown recluse spider. But since the range of the brown recluse doesn't extend into our area, they decided that in 1983 the hobo spider was to be blamed for that one. If we can show Exhibit B, the map, it's been identified in Alaska, Utah, Wyoming, and Canada. It was not given its common name of hobo until '94. Prior to that, it's a mistranslated name that was agrestus, which means mat weaver of the field, or aggressive mat weaver. The spider is not aggressive, but it will bite if it's pressed against the skin. Sometimes the spider is going to run fast toward objects or people, but this is only because he's nearsighted, not of his aggression toward people or objects. There's no difference in size between the male and female spiders. The male hobo is responsible for most bites as it goes looking for the females to mate. The populations of the hobo are declining as its natural enemy, the giant house spider, has been introduced to the Pacific Northwest from Europe. So some preventative measures, if we could put the hobo picture back up there. Keep your bed linens off the floor and beds away from the walls, as they can't climb up the smooth surfaces or on wooden bedposts. Make sure your lawn ornaments and statues are firmly mounted to the ground so they can't build nests under them, and then caulk all the seals and cracks that are broken, and install weather stripping under your doors to keep the critters out. What happens if you get a hobo spider bite? Doctors would really like you to collect the spider in a jar or a baggie, as the sex organs of that spider need to be positively identified by a trained specialist. And then go to the ER quickly. Let's take a look at the brown recluse spider, Exhibit C. And this is a picture of the brown recluse. And let's go to Exhibit D and look at a map. The brown recluse spider is found in the U.S. from the southern Midwest to the Gulf of Mexico. As you're looking at this map, you'll see how the range border stretches from southeast Nebraska to southwest Ohio via the southern parts of Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana. In the southern parts of the U.S., you'll find brown recluse spiders from central Texas to western Georgia. Only occasionally do they make it to west of the Rocky Mountains, but they do. The spider bites from the brown recluse spider are known to have been confused with different kinds of infections such as Staphylococcus. There is now a test available for doctors that can detect brown recluse venom. So if we go back to Exhibit B, the normal size of a brown recluse spider is about 3/4 inches, but can grow bigger. The body coloration of the brown spider varies from brown to light tan shade, and there's markings on it as well. A more reliable way of determining whether or not a spider is a recluse spider is to look at its eyes. The majority of the world's spiders have 8 eyes, and the recluse only has 6. The eyes are arranged in pairs, 2 lateral pairs, 1 median pair. The legs are also, interestingly enough, without spines. One example of an interesting brown recluse spider fact concerns its web. The brown recluse spider is renowned for building an irregular web and will often build itself a small shelter from odd strands of silk. This is not true for only the brown recluse, but for other recluse spiders as well. Spiders usually prefer to stay and wait for the prey to become entangled in the web, but not the brown recluse spider. He likes to live in garages, sheds, woodpiles, and similar places where no one's going to bother him. And he likes the rain-free environment, even in the Pacific Northwest. Even though the brown recluse spider is not the most common venomous spider in the area, Robert did have a up close and personal experience with one 20 years ago in the Portland area. Tell us about your story. What happened to you 20 years ago?
Well, 20 years ago, I had a farm out in the Columbia River Gorge out in Corbett. And I had a wood pile, like everyone has a wood pile. And I was chopping wood. No, actually, I wasn't chopping wood at that time. I was pressure washing the deck and around the wood area to clear it out of webs and what have you.
I see.
It was in August of '93. And I was working, and I felt something get in my boot. And I felt a prick, like you would from a bee or something, or maybe an ant that bites you when you're working in the garden. And I slapped just slapped my boot, and it was done. Whatever it was, I figured it was an ant or something got in there, and I killed it.
Wow.
But within 30 minutes, I started to feel really nauseated, and I got real sweaty, and I stopped pressure washing. I went into the house, and I sat down, and before long, I started to get really dizzy and miserable, and my body started to ache, went kind of feverish, and my wife decided to run me over to Good Sam ER. But by the time I got there, I was starting to lose consciousness, and when I got into the ER, I lost consciousness. Came to in at Good Sam in intensive care with my leg fire engine red from the ankle on up to the hip. It was horribly infected. I told them what had happened, and they said I was pretty sure it was real reminiscent of a brown recluse bite. We argued because they said that there were no really badly infectious spiders in the Northwest.
I see.
So we fought about that. I was in the hospital for 30 days.
Oh.
They sent the people up from the infectious disease control in Salem. They insisted that it was so dangerous that the infection could travel to my heart and I would be dead. And they recommended that I amputate my leg at the hip, taking half the hip with it. And, I didn't think that would be that much fun for me.
No.
Because I was only at the time, my late 30s, early 40s. And 20 years ago, I was 41. So I lay there. I refused to even consider amputation. And because it's hard enough for a below the knee amputation, but for a half your hip amputation, I couldn't imagine how that would be. It would certainly change my life forever. And so I decided I was either going to die with, full body parts or live in some kind of misery, because they said if you keep it and you survive, you are going to be fighting this horrible infection your whole life, and we don't really know the outcome of it or the prognosis for it. And they were pretty much right, because over the next 20 years, actually over the next 10 years, I would have this flare-up of the poison in my body if I was under a time of stress, and it would it would set off the poison, and what happens is, for me, my reaction to it is my leg would swell up probably 3 times the size. Within hours, a couple hours, it would just take off. And the signal for it was inguinal lymph node swelling. So my lymph nodes, in my inguinal area down here would actually get hard as golf balls almost within minutes. And
Sounds very painful.
It's very painful. It almost impedes you from walking right away. And at that moment, you know it's coming. So from 93 to about 99, I was having 2 of these episodes a year.
Oh, wow.
And each time was anywhere from 6 to 10 days in the hospital. So it was very hard. I was working at the time, so every 6 months I'd lose time. And then after 98, it tapered off into once a year, once every 9 months. It did real well. And then around 2004, it stopped. I didn't have any more. I'd get a little leg pain once in a while, but I was okay. So I thought I was pretty much done with it. I'd been on a good diet, I'd lost a lot of weight, eating really well. I figured, well, we're good now. But on March 3rd of this year, I woke up, I was having a good day, and all of a sudden I felt the lymph nodes go, and I knew what I had to do, and I tore myself to the ER at a local hospital, and unfortunately, for whatever reason, I think there were ambulances coming in that day nonstop. I sat in the ER for almost 9 hours before they got there, because the protocol for an onset of this is to get me on heavy antibiotic right away, and we can usually keep it under control, and I can get out of the hospital in anywhere from 4 to 6 days, but that was 6 years ago, and now I'm older. The 9 hours allowed the infection to take over the body, and so I was in pretty serious condition for about 11 days. And then it started to get a little better, but they sent me home because my chemistries got better. The leg was still at least that big. And it was, it's an experience, because the 11th day in the hospital is just the beginning. You go home, you've got another 10 days resting. So basically the entire, exactly, my leg has stopped finally swelling now. So you're looking at from March 3rd till May 12th. So you're 6 weeks of pretty much misery from the bite. And I don't think it's the bite or the venom of the bite anymore, but what the bite has created is some venous insufficiency, although ultrasound says there isn't that much of that, but they can't explain why the leg swells so much, but it's become a case of cellulitis.
Okay.
The cellulitis simply is the medical term for, inflammation of the cells, and they stretch, and what happens is the leg just goes hog wild. It swells up tremendously, and the pain isn't so much as it's underway, but as it starts to shrink, the nerve endings are so stretched that the pain is like having someone holding a match to you nonstop.
It's like a burning pain.
It's absolutely a burning pain, and it mimics a burn, because as it goes down, all the skin begins to slough off like from a burn. And you get all this new skin underneath, and then it's raw to the air, and that hurts. The nerve endings hurt, and you keep on for days, keep sloughing these like sheets of skin off your leg, and it's, from the knee down, it's just, ugh. It's like, you get used to it, but people will walk in your room and go, oh, this is terrible, or they think you're a leper, because you're just dropping skin everywhere, if not body parts, and so it's hard. And so people go, God, you must really hate spiders, right? You must think spiders are horrible. And yet, to this day, I'll see a spider and get them on a piece of paper and put them outside where they belong, because the truth is, without spiders, we would be overrun with insects that would do us in. And if insects ever got organized, we would be in a lot of trouble.
Like the cockroaches out.
Like those organized cockroaches. I know they're running one for office next year. But
Who are you going to vote for?
Well, I don't know. Mr. Roach seems very nice this year. And in the 20s, they had Hal Roach, but he made movies and didn't get really into politics. But I digress. But anyway, spiders are so beneficial to the environment that it's hard to be annoyed with them. But one of the problems I had with being bitten by what is now considered a brown recluse is that they didn't believe they were in the Portland area. The fact is, and just as you said in your introduction, you know, they don't want to be around you, because you think about it. Say you were a spider, and this huge thing was walking around. Yeah, I'd go the other way. You know, my eyesight's pretty good. If it's that big, I'm not going to be there, right? Spiders, they run away, and they have a really inherent, wonderful way of becoming still. So still. And you can wave around, but if they think that they can get away with not being seen, they will absolutely remain or blend in, you know? So basically, they take that old adage of you can run, but you can't hide, to I can't run, you know, I can't run, but I can hide. So they blend in pretty well, and some of them have really good coloring just for that purpose. But it turned out that the brown recluse, the hobo, these spiders that are smaller than, I mean, the one I killed for me was smaller than my pinky, nail of my pinky. And you'd think they were innocuous, you'd think they're just spiders, but their bites can really pack a wallop. But the problem, of course, was that no one believed that that spider existed in this part of the country. And they treated it in a different way than they should have. I'm not even sure what they should have done at the time, but massive amounts of antibiotic are probably the best way to go, you know, a full spectrum antibiotic. But we argued, and it wasn't until about 97, 98 that some studies were shown that because of the massive population growth in this area going towards Mount Hood, we were going further and further into the woods to get firewood. The loggers were making inroads into areas they'd never been into in the foothills of Mount Hood and bringing out these logs. People were bringing them home, and the spiders were inside. And they'd get out, and they would populate, and they would compete for the territory of other spiders.
Right.
So pretty soon they're around, and they can exist through the winter inside logs, just like flies and bees can. I don't know if you've ever had heated with wood.
Yes.
Yeah, you have.
Yes.
Have you ever had the experience where you bring a log in and you set it down, as it warms up, suddenly 100 flies fill the house because they've been wintering over inside the log? There's nothing worse than having your house suddenly with hundreds of flies in the middle of the night, in the middle of winter, and they're everywhere. But the lucky thing is they get warm so quickly they die within 20 minutes, all of them, and then all your job is to vac them up, which is in and of itself another problem. But the spiders are here.
Yes.
And it's also, I don't know if I'm going to be stepping on some of your information here, but you know, as we sleep, you're never, at this very moment, none of us are more than 5 to 10 feet away from a spider. You know, statistically. You know, this may be a clean room, you know, spider-free zone, so to speak, but we've got a lot of the fake ones here.
Yes, we do.
You know,
They're just hanging around.
And they're just hanging out and having a good day. But when you're asleep, the chances are you will eat a few ounces of spiders in your life during your sleep time.
Oh, let's not scare the public here.
Well, you know, it's the truth. So I think it's basically, you know, keep your mouth shut while you're asleep.
Yeah,
okay? You know,
no mouth
if you
breathing.
talk in your sleep, you're bound to swallow a few spiders, and you know that's what you're going to get. But they are around. They're everywhere. They hide. They're quiet. They really don't want to bother you. They're just there because they're hungry. They're competing for food, just like we all are.
And they're looking to mate.
And they're looking to mate. And I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm not available for any spiders. You hear that out there, spiders? I'm not available for mating with spiders because you know what happened. I mean, we've seen those spider movies where humans and spiders are, but you know, that's a different story. And I think it's interesting that you can't tell. And I thought on your introduction there was, you said, now remember, you need to know, what was it? Yeah. You have to get somebody to identify their sex organs, right?
Correct.
And then get yourself to the emergency room. And I'm thinking, well, I'm calling to find out what, I'm sexing a spider, and then I've got to get to the emergency room.
Well, I think it sort of went,
Yeah, it was supposed to be
bag
the
them
other
up
way,
and get them in and
yeah,
go to the
go to the ER and then sex them.
Yeah.
So, but you know, like, God, I can't tell. But you know, I don't know. How do you sex a spider? You know?
Well, you bag them up, put them in a jar, and you give just somebody else to do that and go to the emergency
I know, and
room. Or
there
you have a
and there are
family.
specialists for that spend their lives, you know.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's a male, right? But seriously speaking, the spiders are here. We need to know, I noticed on when you put up the range of them,
Yes.
interesting that there are Apache spiders, and they name them after certain Indian tribes in the Southwest.
Yes.
Which is kind of interesting, but if you saw on that, there was no reach of the brown recluse up here. But with the amazing migration that we have now of people and stuff, there is, I mean, the chances of a brown recluse spider hitchhiking a ride on a Allied Van Lines moving van up to Oregon from Arizona or Texas are pretty darn good.
They're very, very good.
They're very good.
They're
Make
very
the
good.
hitch underneath the thing or in the people's clothing or their bedding or anything. I know in Africa, fire ants are a problem. And yeah, I got you. Fire ants are a problem, and they put buckets of water under the posts of the bed to keep them
Right,
from going up.
right.
You know, you can have it now.
That is so interesting. And here we have a map. We just saw a map of we saw a map of where the recluse is located again.
Right, Arizona desert, Apache. But then you've got the bland spiders, you know, and the devious spiders.
The divas.
And then the reclusas.
And the reclusas.
But those are all considered recluse spiders, right?
Yes, they are. They're all a different type of recluse spider.
Native American spiders, no less,
Native
right?
American spiders. And we're going to get to some of that Native American medicine that they have used to treat spider bites
Really?
in a few
Okay,
moments.
well, how wonderful.
in a few moments. But we're going to look at some exhibits, E, and we're going to take a look at infection. What did a Robert's infection maybe look like?
Well, let's see.
Exhibit E. That
well-
is 3 days after the brown recluse spider bite.
That is nasty, isn't
Does
it?
that look familiar to you?
Mine started out that way with a big red
Mm-hmm.
wheel and then quickly spread.
Well, let's go to Exhibit F and take a look at that one.
You hear Ellery laughing in there.
Does that look familiar? That's 9 days after the bite.
Yeah, now mine never desiccated the skin like that. Mine just swelled it up and made it fire engine red. My leg, you see how the leg is around
Yes,
the wound?
yes.
That's as far as I got. So chances are I killed it before it gave me the full dose.
Full dose,
Because,
okay.
you know, lucky me, because I've seen people lose limbs,
Right.
just not even by their own, you know, permission. They just can't save them.
Right. Let's look at Exhibit G. This is 38 days after the brown recluse spider bite. And you can see on that picture the area, the large area, and how I guess it's slowly healing, and then the raw part is still in the middle, and some patches. Let's go look at Exhibit H. Okay, and this is 10 months after the brown recluse spider bite for this particular person. Again, this is not your pictures, Robert.
Right.
This is,
They obviously got a very, very, very good dose of
They
venom.
did, yeah, it looks pretty bad. So, let's take a look at your healed area of your
Okay.
right leg.
Well, this is the leg. This is right now. So I just had 6 weeks ago was the last attack I had of the
Right,
cellulitis.
right.
So I actually wear a compression stocking to aid in keeping it from swelling, but lately it's been doing really well. I don't have to wear it all the time anymore.
Okay, good.
This is what it looks like, as opposed to a regular leg.
Okay.
I've got, you can see there's still some.
I can see it.
You
I
can see all that?
Yes.
It never,
You can
it
see
never
the
goes away.
area, the dark area.
This is right where the bite was. That was the focal part.
Okay.
And the leg was actually this big in the hospital.
Yeah,
And it's just frightening to look at. You think it actually, this time they let it go for so long in the ER without treatment that by the 5th day, the leg was starting to break open and weep. It was really ugly. But that's it. And it only goes as far, for some reason, it stops at the ankle, if you can catch that, Harvey. But it is, the discoloring is interesting. It's hard. I wear shorts in the summer, and people they walk by, and all I can see is them looking at my discolored leg, and it's an interesting deal. But I have some fun with that because people, are very curious, and they'll say, "Well, my goodness, what what happened to your leg? And I'll go, oh my God, my leg. Oh my God, and of course that keeps them from ever asking anyone again. But
And everybody sort of moves away
yeah, and then they
from
go,
you. Move away.
yeah, he's on something. But that's the leg, and I keep the stocking on so that I don't have any problems. That also keeps spiders off of me. But you know what? Spiders, I have no problem with spiders at
No
all.
animosity.
No, why? Why would I? There's more of them, far more of them than there are of us. There's far more insects than there are. We're kind of here, but it always bothers me to someone go, oh look, there's a spider, right? And
Yeah.
you go, well, wait a minute. That spider consumes its weight in insects every night. And if it wasn't for that spider, you'd be whipping flies and you'd be mosquito bitten to death. You'd be a mess.
Well, thanks, Robert, for showing us your leg, and we could tell where the wound was, and that you're still really struggling with this. Yeah, it's not really healed.
It's not. It still always hurts. There's never a time that goes by that it doesn't. I found that over time I used to get pain pills for problems, but you know what? The pain pills just create other problems.
Yeah.
Right now when I have a bad outbreak, it's ibuprofen, or I had a friend point out that I can get into a nice hot tub with Epsom salts, and that'll draw some of whatever's doing it. I mean, it can't, after 20 years the venom is gone. There's been some ideas or some theories proposed that what happens is the actual venom is a protein, and the protein encapsulates and exists in you forever. Okay? And then under times of stress or some other mitigating factor, we'll cleave the protein, release the venom again, creates other encapsulated proteins, but the venom that gets out then causes the cellulitis, which goes. But, it would cost literally hundreds of thousands of dollars to prove it. And you'd have to find people who've got brown recluse problems that are recurring. I don't know how much study has been to follow a brown recluse victim over 20 years or 30 years or from bite to death. There isn't money for that. They're more interested in the mating habits of seagulls and that kind of thing. So, I don't know. But someday that'll all come out. I'm sure the areas where brown recluse spiders are found will increase as they become, indigenous to everywhere because of our migratory ability that we have now. Because, previously people moved around very slowly, and now we can actually, if someone's sick in Los Angeles, they can make people in Paris sick within, 18 to 24 hours. People around the world can catch it if there's, that's the problem we have with biological terrorism, is that you can infect the world within 3 to 4 days.
Because of our ability to travel.
And so
quickly.
easily.
Yeah, and easily.
Yeah, I mean, they check people at the airports for weapons, but not for biologicals. You could easily take shaving cream or an aftershave bottle, check your luggage in the plane, and take it out in another country and just spill it in a sink, and you've released a biological. So it's the same thing with spiders. Spiders can go, you've seen the Arachnid movies, right?
Yes,
Where the
yes.
spider comes up from South America in some kind of coffin, or here they are, they try to mate on strings in the studios, and they just can't reach each other. But it's like even animals hitchhike.
Yes.
They come and they go. They can go places. And they're so small. Even cats and dogs hitchhike on trains and places. You've seen the dogs that get left at a rest stop, find their way home after 6 months right across the country. Well, these spiders, and you know what? There are spiders that when they're young or born, they throw the silk into the air, and the breeze picks them up and sends them out over the countryside on these beautiful little parachutes of silk. I mean, how beautiful is that, right? I mean, when you watch, like when I had the farm in Corbett, and it's still there, but in somebody else's custody. But out in Corbett, you'd see when the sacks would break of the eggs, and literally hundreds of little spiders start going everywhere and spreading out, and we would stop counting at 200 or 300 of these sometimes, if all the sacks around the doorway would break at once, or you'd puncture them and they'd, premature spiders, but they would come out and just spread out everywhere, and within a few minutes they'd all disappeared into some crack or crevice, and they're all hiding where they're waiting for their next meal. So, and that's happening over and over and over again in a million different places at the same time, where spiders are out there to eat, mate, and reproduce. That's basically their life, right? There's no spider colleges, there's no educational requirements, and they have no constitution. So it's like
That's their goal in life, and that.
their whole life is to be
But
born,
even-
to eat, to procreate, and to die.
Yeah, and to bite people.
And, well, no,
No,
right?
right,
No,
just
absolutely.
kidding.
That's not
Just
a pro.
kidding.
That's not their thing.
I know it isn't, I know it isn't.
But just like anyone, they'll fight if you're pushed into a corner. You can't put everyone can get pushed into a corner, but there's the tipping point where people will fight back. So will animals. A dog will fight back, a cat will fight back, a spider will fight back.
So let's recap the medical attention that you've gotten over the years. Could you kind of tick off some of the things that the therapies that were good for you that seemed to work and didn't work?
What didn't work was doing nothing.
Okay?
What did work was to be proactive when you don't have it. If you're at home at night, you put your leg up and you let it drain and you let it not swell. Because the more it swells, the warmer it gets. The warmer it gets, the more of a, what do I call it, an incubator it becomes. And that's a problem because infection loves warmth and it'll fly. So one thing is, if you're tired, or if, well, let's talk about my situation in particular. If I'm fatigued, if I'm really fatigued, I go home, put my leg up, and maybe put a cold pack on it, and it feels so much better. If one of the things I have to be proactive about is that children, dogs, or cats do not scratch my leg, because it's already so warm and such an incubator that and if you don't, and if people at home don't know it, you always have staph and strep infection on your skin. You can't run away from it. We're all covered with it. It's just our ability to fight it that allows us to coexist with bacteria.
Right.
But unfortunately, with me, it's the skin, if you don't understand the term friable, do you know what friable means?
Yes,
Well,
yes.
friable, for people who don't know, means you're very thin, easily broken. My skin can't, on this leg only, can't stand to be scratched, or I might set off the cellulitis. That might be the very seminal moment that gives the rise to cellulitis, and I'm done.
Right.
So I have to be proactive the socks are one way. A dog can come up and brush or scratch. It's not going to get through the pants and the socks. It may irritate it, but as long as it doesn't break the skin, I don't get the staph infection in there. And that's my biggest fear, is like to go someplace that I'm far away from home, walking through the woods. Recently, and thank goodness this was last summer, working through some berry bushes, I had to get through one, and I got one runner that just ripped through my leg. And I immediately went and got peroxide on it, and I threw some Neosporin on it, and I covered it, and it didn't go. But if you're out hiking, or you're out camping, or you fall off your bicycle, or any number of things, walking by a car in the parking lot that has a sharp edge, and you walk too close and it just nicks you, you could be in the hospital within a few hours. And that's a scary thing. So I used to wear shorts a lot. I wear long pants as much as I can, just if I'm going to be in that kind of a situation. Ideally, I should live at the beach, right, on the sand and the water, and that might be the best goal in the world, is to live at the beach or have a nice swimming pool I can be in all day in SoCal. But I don't have that situation right now, so I have to be careful what I'm doing. We live in a world of hard objects, and so I have to be careful of that. Now, medically, if it takes off and it's ready to go, I always have a bottle of antibiotic at home.
Okay.
This time I didn't, because it's been 6 years, so I don't keep, antibiotic goes bad. It doesn't really go bad in a year, but it loses its potency starting, when they say it expires, that's when it begins to really lose its potency, and it goes downhill from there. It never completely becomes impotent, but it becomes far less than what it says it is. But if you renew a prescription for antibiotic every year, if you have this problem, you are in good shape. If you feel it come on, you throw 4 of those antibiotics down and get yourself to the ER for
you took 4.
I'm talking about for me.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's never a bad idea for people to keep a full spectrum antibiotic in their home, because you never know. And to take it on a trip, because if you're ever traveling, sometimes it's not that easy to get to a doctor, get to a pharmacy, or get admitted to a hospital
Sure.
where you aren't. It's not your hometown, right?
Okay.
And luckily now with electronic records, a hospital can, call for your records and have them immediately. But I have to say there's a lot of glitches there. Sometimes they send the wrong records. They may be treating you for someone else's problem. So sometimes if you travel, I've got to say that take a copy of your records with you. Take an antibiotic with you. That's for everybody, right? I mean, if you think about it, right? If saving your life is a matter of moments or a matter of hours, if you have the information with you, then you're safe.
You're ahead of the game.
You're ahead of the game.
Yeah.
The world's full of spiders. The world's full of venomous snakes. The world's full of all kinds of things that you would never expect that could do you harm. And if you go even, with a small modicum of preparation, you'll do well. You'll have a better outcome than if you're completely naked to, hopefully the system will take care of me. I hope I haven't gotten off track here.
No, that's great information. Thank you for sharing your experience. And you've told us that go to the ER, Epsom salts after you've been through that horrendous experience to sort of manage the ongoing swelling and pain. And you have antibiotics at home. And of course, everyone out here, needs to talk with their doctor and, prepare it their way. But that's very good information. Now we're going from the medical model. Let's talk for a few minutes about the Native American Indian remedies. And we're going to show Exhibit I. And this is a plant. This is, before I tell you about this plant, I'm going to just tell you that this information I'm giving you tonight is purely for historical and cultural purposes. If you use these herbs or plants improperly, they can be dangerous if not fatal. So for this reason, the methods to prepare the primitive remedies in many cases are omitted. Do not use any remedy described without the advice of the professional health practitioner or a shaman. So we have in front of us the Fendler bladder pod. And this plant, the Navajos made a tea out of the blossoms and used it to treat any spider bites. Exhibit J.
Hi, Jenny.
And this is the purple coneflower. The Plains Indians use this as a universal application for the bites and stings of all crawling, flying, or leaping bugs. Between June and September, they take the plant, which grows in the dry open woods and on prairies, and they make sure it is the correct one, and it's always purple, so that's what they look for. Could we see Exhibit K? And we have a spider floating around here.
It's a spider going, K.
Okay, here we go. The broom snakeweed. The broom snakeweed. The Navajos chewed the stem and applied the spit or the resin to insect bites and stings of all kinds. Well, Exhibit L is mullein.
Ooh, that's interesting.
And that's mullein, a flower with, it looks like some ants on the petals.
It looks like ants.
Yeah, just a few ants in there, eating away. The Native Americans used the wet puffy mullein seed pods as a poultice. And many different nations use those. So we've talked about the medical model and how your situation, has required ER visits and lengthy, painful, horrendous recuperations and process of healing to a certain extent, because I heard you say that you live with this every day to some degree, and that situation, the cellulitis, is with you in your system all the time.
It dictates a lot of the decisions I make about where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do. It's unfortunate, but
Yeah.
I'd rather have the leg than, not.
So what else, Robert, about this latest medical issue that you have with your leg? What else do you want us to know about your personal experience that you think might be valuable to our viewers?
The best advice I can give to anybody at this time is to have a physician that you have a relationship with at any age. I know that most parents always go, I have a pediatrician for my child, I have this, I have that. I decided early on I was going to make a good relationship with an internal medicine doctor in case I had problems. This was even before the original spider bite. But I made the real mistake of choosing an older physician, and what do? They die. And so they do. I mean, we all move on, right? And physicians are famous for, a lot of them statistically died before age 60 because of the stress in their lives. So I've already lost 2 physicians that I picked to do. The problem is, if you're going to pick out a physician that you can rely on, you have to have a relationship with that physician. You have to sit down and interview them just like you would a nanny for your child, a cook for your kitchen or your restaurant, or a receptionist for your business, or even a mate that you're going to date. You want to know that you can depend on this person. If you call them and you're in trouble, that they're going to know who you are. They're going to know all about you, and that you're not pulling their leg, or that you're not just another complainer or just another nameless patient that they have. You really, really do want to find a doctor that will be sensitive to your needs, because there's nothing worse than, and this goes for not only spider bites, but for anything. If you have a problem with breathing, or you have an asthmatic attack, or you develop some kind of boils, or you feel a lump or something, you want to be able to call somebody who isn't going to look at you with a jaundiced eye and say another one, or just another patient in the day, but will know that you either had a history of this, or you've never had a history of this. It's a different protocol for each way. If you've had a history, then they want to know what medication you've been on before, what interactions there might be, where else you've been. One of the things that's interesting now about communication that we have is that they know if people who go doctor shopping.
Yes.
And that rings, that sends up a red flag if you're always looking for the same medications from the doctors you're shopping, right? But if you're doctor shopping to look for a doctor without a disease, that's not going to come up as a problem. You're not going to be red flagged for doctor shopping. You're actually doctor interviewing, and it doesn't hurt to interview a physician. You know, they may be a physician that takes offense at being interviewed is not worth for you to interview, because then that's what you're going to expect for care. You know, someone who hasn't got time for you, and that may not be their fault. Doctors are very busy, and they're overwhelmed, especially medical doctors who are charged with your responsibility, and they give out very dangerous chemicals to you in the form of prescriptions, and they can't always keep up with stuff because they're so busy they don't have time to read the materia medica that comes with every new drug that the salesman comes by and says, here, I'm going to leave you with these, try them for this problem. The doctor goes, good idea, but might not be for you, and sometimes they miss the contraindications. Usually, if you have a question about medications, the last person you want to call is the doctor. The first person you want to call would be the
Pharmacist.
The pharmacist. The pharmacist is trained in all of that, and that's all they do all day is fill medications and make sure. Many times, when I was married, my wife had different medications, and more than once, the pharmacist called and said, I don't know what the doctor was thinking, but he prescribed 2 medications that are just not compatible. And pharmacists make mistakes. I don't know if you remember the movie It's a Wonderful Life, right? And the pharmacist makes a mistake, and it changes everything because yada, 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 right? And that's happened. It happened to my ex used to take a blood pressure medication, 5 milligrams. I picked up a prescription for her, and she was like, she couldn't wake up. She just couldn't get through the day, and I finally, couldn't understand. I said, well, it's the right medication, but they actually filled it for 25 milligrams. So she was taking 5 days worth of medication every day.
Right.
So by the end of a couple of days, she was just like,
Not doing
yeah,
well.
not doing well, and so they make mistakes, right?
So then we're really talking about having a relationship, a good relationship with a doctor. We're talking about if there are certain health plans or certain clinics that rotate doctors in and out, and a person may not always get the same doctor. So then people just need to be as vigilant as they can about making sure that their records are there and that the medications.
That's where you would want to have a little notebook, or you know what? They actually, pharmacies now sell a zip, what do they call those things? A zip drive, little zip drive that will encode all of your medical history. It fits right in your wallet. And if you go into a doctor's office, you flip them the zip drive, they plug it in, everything current on it comes up.
Okay.
And that's a good thing to buy. I know that people go, oh my God, we're with Big Brother. I don't want people to know, what if I lose the zip drive? People will know, what's happening. People will know what's going on with me, and I'll lose my privacy. But you know what? Privacy, when you're on the operating table or you're so sick, your privacy is the last thing on your mind. You want to get help.
Having a relationship, a good relationship with a doctor. We're talking about if there are certain health plans or certain clinics that rotate doctors in and out, and a person may not always get the same doctor. So then people just need to be as vigilant as they can about making sure that their records are there and that the medications.
That's where you would want to have a little notebook, or you know what? They actually, pharmacies now sell a zip, what do they call those things? A zip drive, little zip drive that will encode all of your medical history. It fits right in your wallet. And if you go into a doctor's office, you flip them the zip drive, they plug it in, everything current on it comes up.
Okay.
And that's a good thing to buy. I know that people go, oh my God, we're with Big Brother. I don't want people to know, what if I lose the zip drive? People will know, what's happening. And people will know what's going on with me, and I'll lose my privacy. But you know what? Privacy, when you're on the operating table or you're so sick, your privacy is the last thing on your mind. You want to get help.
Thank you so much, Robert, for spending time with us tonight and joining our friends who
Our spider
have
friends?
dropped in. And really a very serious subject, the recluse spider bite and the hobo bite. And we really enjoyed hearing about your experience, even though unfortunately you had the experience. But who better to put on the show here and share their experience than
Remember,
the
your
person.
chances are not, it's a lottery that you might get bitten by a brown recluse,
Or
but,
not.
but there's no problem with being prepared.
That's right. So emergency tips. One thing is I've learned, don't use a tourniquet. That's what I've read. Don't use a tourniquet. So get yourself to the ER, and if you can't, call 911 and get some emergency help and go to the closest hospital. We are so excited that you came over and joined us, and we wish you the best of luck in the healing of your ongoing problem, and take care. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure, Renee.
You're very welcome. And thank you everyone for joining us for another episode of Connecting Communities. This episode was Arachnid Once Bitten. Thank you.